Hey everyone, it's Joy here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here for this video. I have another exclusive for STAMPtember. This is between Simon Says Stamp and Honey Bee Stamps. So it's a super cute set. This is the Warm Wishes stamp set. And it's a pretty large stamp set and you can create a whole scene out of it, which is what I did. So here is the stamp set. You've got some great sentiments. You've got a snowman and trees, a hat, a scarf, a bench, presents, a sled. You have snow at the top. You've got other little snowflakes, some open hearts, a closed heart, and like I said, tons of little sentiments. So we're going to create a scene card with some masking because I don't have coordinating dies for this. I'm not sure if coordinating dies go with this or not, but if they are, I'll link them below. So I have my scene laid out. I am going to put the scarf on the snowman. And so because we're going to be doing some masking, I like to lay my stamps down, and then so for example, I had my snowman laid down and I had the scarf on top of him. So when I close the lid to my MISTI, the things that are in the front and the foreground are going to stick to my MISTI first. And those are the things you want to stamp first. So I'm going to ink this up with Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink. This is watercolor friendly because we're going to use some Zig markers to color this. Now, also, I'm going to be using, doing an overlay with acetate, and we're going to be doing some stamping on the acetate. So stick around for that because it's super, super cute. I also stamped the images onto some masking paper. So the presents and the scarf, we're going to mask those off. That way we can then stamp the snowman and the sled underneath the presents. So again, you're going to be working from the front to the back of your images. So we needed to stamp the scarf and the presents first because the snowman is going to be behind the scarf, if that makes sense. And then your presents are going to be on top of the sled, so basically in front of. So that's how you kind of need to think about it when you're going to be doing some layering masking is what I'm calling it, because you can do masking without overlapping any images, but we are doing that today. So I have the masks placed down, and now we can bring in the snowman and the sled and put those in place. So I'm just going to line my snowman up where his scarf, where he's going to be wearing his cute little scarf. There's also a hat, but I opted to not use that. Then the sled I have placed just slightly overlapping the bottom part of the presents here because we want the presents to look like they're sitting on top of the sled. So I'm going to ink that up, and I'm also going to mask off the snowman because in the stamp set there's a cute little like snowdrift or a little hill. So I want to bring that in, and that's going to be kind of behind his head, so we don't need a line behind his head. So if you noticed, I didn't trim the masking paper at the bottom because I'm not masking there. I just needed it at the top. So I'm going to line that up, stamp it, put that in place, and then we can peel back all of the masking paper. Now I did notice that my two trees didn't reach the little snow bank, so I just brought in a dark black micro pen and just finished drawing down the tree trunks. So let's peel off our masking paper, and look at how cute. Now we have this great scene. Okay, so like I mentioned, we're going to do some Zig coloring. I am using light blue for the snowman. I'm going to use light blue for the snow itself. For the sky, I'm going to use cobalt blue. So here's the light blue for the snowman and for the tips of the trees because it has the snow on it. I wanted you to see the snow basically, so that's why I went with this light blue. I did bright yellow for his little carrot nose, beige for the sled. Then I have geranium red for this present here and for his scarf. And so if you guys have seen me before when I'm coloring with my Zig markers, I have a little container of water, I have a paper towel. And so what I like to do with my water brush pen, I have no water in it. So I could probably just use a regular paintbrush, but I don't have any. So this is what I use. So I like to put down a little bit of color, and then I dip my brush in the water, gently tap it on the paper towel, and then bring it to the paper to blend it out. Because I don't personally like to have too much water. I feel like the less water I have, the more control I have, if that makes sense. Again, you have to use watercolor paper. I'm using Bristol Smooth watercolor paper because Zig markers will not work on regular cardstock. This is deep green for the trees, which I think is so super pretty. And also, if you get too much color on your brush, so once you've have your brush to the dark part of the color and you're blending it out, just wipe off some of that excess color onto your paper towel and then go back to your cardstock and finish blending. This is the cobalt blue for that present, and I'm also going to use cobalt blue for the sky. I have a bigger brush here just so I could get to work on this really quickly, and I'm just blending it up. I actually added the cobalt blue to my work surface, added a little bit of water, and then brought my brush to the paper. I didn't want to have it too dark on the paper. It is looking a little bit streaky, but I actually don't mind, because when I do this overlay, it's just going to really look like maybe there's snow going on in the background, and so I don't mind it. I kind of like that look, that it's not like this perfect color. Then I'm using the light blue again. I did the same thing of adding it to my work surface, diluting it with a little bit of water, and then bringing in this big brush and just painting, you know, the bottom part. I will come in with the actual light blue marker and add a little bit of shading underneath some of these images, which I'll show you in a second. And that really makes your images look grounded, and it doesn't look like they're floating off into space. I used, this is, hold on you guys, I have to find where I wrote it down. Oh, this is Spectrum Noir's Spun Gold, like metallic pen, like a glitter pen. So here is again that light blue, and I blended it out with the water, which added a shadow underneath the snowman and underneath the sled. Okay, now I have a piece of A2 sized acetate, and it's actually over my image in my MISTI here, even though obviously you can't see it. So I'm going to line this up because we're going to use some Stazon cotton white ink to stamp snow and the Merry Christmas sentiment on top of this acetate overlay. You guys, this is such a fantastic way to add another layer to your card. And I loved how this turned out. So it's going to look like a complete snowy scene. So I'm making sure my sentiment is nice and lined up. I'm pushing everything into the corners, making sure everything is straight. And then again, I'm using the Stazon cotton white ink. You have to use a Stazon ink for plastic like this, for acetate. Nothing else is going to dry. Every other ink will just sit on top and smear. This does not. I mean, I do give it a second to dry. I honestly don't know if it dries immediately because I'm too scared to touch it. But I did put this aside when I was done just to let it dry for a few minutes before I touched all over it. So I had that first layer of snow at the top. I'm going to bring in one more layer. So I'm lining up that stamp, kind of letting some of those dots overlap where it meets. I don't need the Merry Christmas sentiment anymore, so I will remove that from my MISTI, but I am going to line this up, make sure my magnets are in place, making sure everything is nice and lined up before I stamp it, and then inking that up and placing that down one more time. Then in the stamp set, there is like a little cluster of like, I think it's 4 or 5, right there, 4 or 5 little snowflakes. I'm going to put this on the rest of my card. Now, I will be honest, I didn't need the MISTI for this part of it. I could have just added it to an acrylic block because you only need to stamp it once. And I kind of did that right at the very end, but I don't know. I just wasn't thinking. But I am lining these up to kind of hug around the sentiment. And these are really cute snowflakes. So I'm just going to continue doing this all the way down my card. I am making sure not to cover up the face of my snowman. I want to make sure to see his face, but I do want it over the trees. I do want it over the presents. And remember, again, we're stamping on the acetate, so it's not actually on your images. And then I'm going to show you how I adhered this together. There's a couple ways you could do this. I decided to do it with a frame, but you could do it where you are maybe using some thread or something. Oh, look at how cute that is. Some thread or ribbon to tie it at the top with like a couple hole punches, but I decided to add a frame to it, which I think looks really, really cute. So this is Memory Box's 8-stitched rectangle die. I'm using the largest one. It's going to cut out this tiny frame, and I did die cut this twice. I'm going to put one on the front of my acetate, and I'm going to put one between the card panel and the acetate. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want there to be the tiniest bit of space between the acetate and the colored background panel. So it gives it just a little bit of dimension. And when I mean just a little bit, but when you look at the card in person, you can kind of tell that there's space. It's not, the acetate's not laying directly on the card panel. So I used some liquid glue very sparingly because you don't want it to leak out onto your acetate. Then I'm going to glue these together, and I will add this to an A2 sized card. I also want to say, if you guys like what you're seeing, please subscribe to my channel, comment, like, share, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video, and I appreciate you guys so very much for doing that. Okay, a little bit of liquid glue, again being just very light about it. Adding that acetate piece directly to the top and making sure everything's lined up and nicely adhered. And then look at this cute card. Look at all that snow over top of our image, but it's not, but it looks different because it's on the acetate. So anyways, I love this. I'm super excited about STAMPtember. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired, and I will have a couple more projects for STAMPtember, so stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.